Harry, those tests are certainly one good way to put age on a car in a hurry, aren't they?
They point up the big differences in a hurry, too, Jack.
Harry, you know, it's one thing for you and me to be familiar with these differences, and we've really got them in ride, performance, handling, and economy. Everything that's of importance to a customer and to a salesman.
You're wondering how we can get these things in a form a salesman can use.
Right.
Well, come on. I think we've got the answer right here in your own engineering division. You've practically torn these cars apart down to the last bolt and nut. It's a shame that every salesman can't see this. But maybe you and I can look at the nuts and bolts in terms a salesman can use. Take torsion air, for example. Those torsion bars made a whale of a difference out there today. But actually, torsion bars are only a part of the story. Our entire suspension system gives us the difference in ride and handling over Ford and Chevrolet.
Yeah, but the big difference that pays off for salesmen is action on the road. The kind of action you can feel in the seat of your pants.
And the top of your head if you were bouncing around inside that Ford. Looks like they could use Oriflow shock absorbers.
Here's another feature of torsion air that's always working for the driver. The position of these 2 points gives us a high roll center for flat, level cornering at all speeds. And the difference between the angle of these pivots and the steering axis is what gives us flat starts and stops.
Chevrolet's 4 coil springs really give the car some bouncy action.
And they don't help control rear end squat on acceleration either. But our rear suspension gives us quite a few important advantages for safety, comfort, and control. We set our wheels farther apart for a wider grip of the road. Then we put our rear springs farther apart for more car stability and a better ride. And the way we mount the Plymouth axle gives us the effect of a double spring. The short, stiff forward section gives firm body and axle control. The long rear section is limber for a comfortable ride.
Look, we have wider rear springs than Ford and more leaves. The way Ford mounts their axle doesn't give them that double spring effect either. No wonder Plymouth can stick to the road better if the driver gets surprised by a curve. Torsion air pays off with a level ride on curves and corners. It stays a lot flatter than Ford or Chevrolet. Torsion air really makes a big difference in the driver's comfort and safety.
Steering is important to safety, too. Our manual gear has a lower ratio than either Ford or Chevrolet. And when it comes to power, our built-in, full-time power steering unit has a still lower ratio than theirs. This is the add-on type of booster power steering used by Ford and Chevrolet. It's really only power-assisted manual steering. And look at all the exposed plumbing. So our built-in, full-time unit gives the driver easier and faster steering.
And he'll really appreciate it when an eager weaver pulls out suddenly and he has to steer out of trouble fast. I'd call Plymouth's margin of safety a big difference.
And any prospect who's interested in safety is interested in brakes. Plymouth brake design features 2 actuating cylinders.
Well, you don't find that on this Chevrolet brake nor on the Ford brake. And since the front brakes do most of the stopping work, you need the extra actuation you get out of those 2 cylinders.
In addition, Plymouth's center plane design features this supporting lobe to provide more uniform, more controllable stopping.
Well, you don't find that on this Chevrolet brake, nor on the Ford brake. That explains why Plymouth can put more of its brake lining to work.
And we have more lining to put to work, don't we?
That's right, we do. The Chevrolet advertised more lining area this year, but they've taken part of the lining area that they had, thrown it away by cutting this big wide groove down the center of the shoe. Now, this is a pretty fair approach they've taken to their problem of stopping the extra weight of their car. But in spite of everything they've done, we still end up with more lining per pound of car weight. Here's one of the greatest safety features on Plymouth, and it's been a big difference with Plymouth for 20 years, the safety rim wheel. It's a very simple principle. This little hump on the bead seat keeps the wire bead up against the side of the rim so that even without any air in the tire, it stays in place so that the car can be kept under control. Without this hump, and the air leaves the tire drops off the bead, even coming off in some cases. And when this happens, the chances are you've lost control of the automobile. Observe this Plymouth test and see how the safety rim lets the driver steer the car to a safe stop. When the tire on a competitive car blows out and starts to wrench at the wheel, it's like wrestling alligators.
Harry, you can sure learn a lot from these chassis teardowns, but there are a lot of differences in the bodies, too.
You're doggone right. Let's go look at the cars in the flesh. You don't need a teardown or a test track to see a lot of the big differences. For example, in the area of styling, here is a car that I think most people would class as being conservative. Now, even with their conservatism, they've managed to get a dramatic look in the rear end of this car by reverting back to their old round taillights.
Or, on the other hand, if we accept this car as conservative, we would surely define this one as radical.
Yes, Jack, and having gone this radical, it seems to me that their only alternative on the next change is to revert to a more conservative approach. This could mean that in the future, this car would look a little strange.
Yes, Harry, and I think having described these two extremes, we would certainly define Plymouth styling as modern, contemporary.
Frankly, I do.
This sport deck has a look of obvious and very unique good taste, and these fins and tail lamps accent the elegant richness of Plymouth's low modern design, and they're a Plymouth trademark. The whole car has a look of refined quality about it, even after a dirty day at the track.
There's more to good progressive design than styling. This car of ours is made to be easy to live with. Now, this is a little thing, but take this door handle. On a Ford and Chevrolet, you need your whole hand to operate the door handle. But on this Plymouth, if you approach it with an armload of groceries like you and I do, you can open the door with one finger.
Talk about easy to live with, Harry. Let's take a look at that swivel seat.
Fine.
Harry, there's one thing we haven't emphasized sufficiently with our salesman about this swivel seat. With all its finely contoured back and cushion construction, featuring extra deep foam padding, it's easily the most comfortable seat in any car today.
You know, that's right. We've talked so much about the swiveling part of this, and we have failed to bring out the real solid comfort that's designed and built into this seat. Of course, even without a swivel seat, a Plymouth is easier to get in and out of because of the wider door opening. And after you're in it, you got plenty of lap room. I don't need this, but there are some people that do, and it's a real asset to them.
Yes, and I can see that you have very ample head and leg room as well.
Yes, and apparently we have the push-button business locked up. We've gotten accustomed to the push-button control on the transmissions, but this year I have enjoyed the push-button control on the heater. We appear to have the jump on Ford and Chevrolet at this point.
There's a vital backseat comfort story to be told here, too. It starts by being easier to get in.
That's right. I notice you have plenty of foot room. And this pillar doesn't have a big web extending out into the foot area. Another thing, it seems to me the tunnel on this car is smaller than in the other two.
I'm sure it is. I think we can best compare that by going to have a look at the Ford. See, their tunnel is high and wide. Also, they have this large web that intrudes into the passenger compartment. Now, Ford does have a reasonably wide door opening, but they greatly diminish its effectiveness. This big sill you have to step over, and with a rather low overall door height dimension.
I wonder how many people have tried to use this as a handle in closing the door.
I guess it's happened at the cost of a couple of fingers. That's long been a Ford design problem on their rear windows.
Did you bump your knee on this point this morning when you got in this car?
I sure did. That's something I could never get used to.
Here's another thing to me that doesn't look too good. This corner's kind of sharp, and this point sticks out in front of the seat back.
Yes, and Chevrolet has a back scratcher like that, too. The basic problem is that the seat back is behind the center pillar. Just one of those little things, But it makes you wonder if people know about such things when they buy a car they plan to keep and live with for a couple of years.
I see they have one of these knee knockers too. And this, coupled with their narrower door opening, 8 inches narrower than Plymouth across these two critical points, means that you get squeezed between the knee knocker and the back scratcher. Now, Plymouth's wider door opening isn't going to sell cars by itself. The point is, it's just one of the advantages of Plymouth's progressive design. Styled to be smart and easy to live with.
What about the inside story?
Well, it's smaller than Plymouth, bigger on the outside, but smaller on the inside.
More metal to park, and less to live with.
You could say that about this windshield. They have more glass to advertise than Plymouth, but less to see through. Their big windshield area is wasted by the extreme amount of slant and the amount that the windshield is pushed forward. This drops the top header and pushes the whole thing ahead so that it's like looking through a slot. Speaking of slots, this defroster slot reminds me of the heater. Jack, have you got a countdown sheet on this heater?
Who reads owner's manuals?
Well, the owner of this one better, because he's got controls scattered all over the instrument panel. You've been getting all the practice in the rear seats of these cars. Try this one.
All right.
Now, wait a minute. You cheated. Roll the window up.
Now there is a hump. Suppose we had 3 people in the back seat of this car. What would the middleman do with his feet?
He'd have them over here stealing your room. You know, looking at that cushion, it looks pretty thin to me.
This pack of cigarettes is a handy gauge.
Yeah, and it confirms what I thought. That cushion's only about half the thickness of the Plymouth rear cushion. Come on, let's you and I get out of here and see what this styling does for the trunk. Come on, hop off.
There is a big difference. There's one way to find out. Suppose this were a toolbox or a suitcase or anything else you might like to carry. It's a big lift out
At this point.
and a bigger lift in.
You know, that's not something I'd want to do every day. I think that illustrates the point we were talking about. Well, let's you and I go have a look at the station wagons. Maybe you'd like to crawl in the third seat of that Ford wagon.
Well, if I have to.
Well, go ahead. You're young. I notice there aren't very many springs underneath that cushion. You have to get out of the car to pick up those pads. They don't look very thick to me either. Well, you got it hooked, I guess. Never mind getting in, Jack. You've done all the work. I'll close up the back end. Same old two-piece gate they've had since 1951. Come on, let's have a look at the Chevrolet. You know, I wouldn't want anybody to think that just because Chevrolet has the third seat facing to the rear, that they've caught up with us on station wagons. Come on, try getting in the third seat of this one. See how this one works. You know, wait a minute. I notice you're having more difficulty getting into this one than you do in ours. And it seems to me the reason is because the roof isn't raked forward as far as we have it, so that you can stand in this footwell with your body in a natural position. You either have to get in sideways or you have to fall forward. And even after you're in, I notice that you don't have the headroom that you ought to have. You have to sit in a slouching position, which is certainly uncomfortable, and your gaze is cut off by this header bar. Also, I noticed they don't trim off this footwell like we do.
Also, just like on Ford, notice the big gap between the tailgate and the cargo deck. A fine place for cargo to fall.
That's right. It would. It'd certainly fall down in there. Come on, let's get out. I want to show you something else in this car. Close this gate up a minute. You know, looking at the back end of this car, it's pretty evident that the styling was worked out on a two-door hardtop, and it certainly isn't compatible with a Suburban. The top of that car doesn't seem to have any relationship to the bottom. Now, you take on our station wagon, the fins are compatible with the overall styling. I don't think we're bragging one bit when we say that Plymouth really got the big difference in station wagons. It's still the biggest wagon in its field.
And we know it's the most comfortable.
It's the most functional. It's the easiest to convert from carrying people to carrying cargo. And with all these features, which are in every Plymouth wagon, it's certainly no surprise that its popularity has been double that of the industry average.
Say, we forgot the engine story. As in our other lines, the Plymouth Suburban features the biggest engines in the low-price field.
The way I see it, the big difference people are looking for in engines is economy. So we have designed features into our engines to give it to them. One of these is a change in the automatic choke. We place the choke deep in the intake manifold so that it is instantly responsive to engine heat. Therefore, it quickly reduces the rich starting mixture and thus saves gasoline. No one else does this.
No one else features a three-stage metering rod either, Harry. This device gives us tremendous mid-range economy without sacrifice in performance. We're proving this in special economy tests we're conducting right now.
What are the results of those tests?
I have them right here. As you know, we've been testing standard V8 engine and automatic transmission equipped models of Plymouth, Ford, and Chevrolet. The results on 20 to 60 mile per hour average fuel economy tests are the Ford Fairlane 500, 18.0 miles per gallon. For the Chevrolet Impala, 19.5 miles per gallon. And for the Plymouth Fury, 20.5 miles per gallon.
Jack, how would a salesman interpret this data to a customer?
I think that would be easy to do. We select the speed range through which these tests are conducted in order to simulate most closely the driving conditions experienced by the average owner. We find that the economy figures developed in such tests are completely comparable and do carry over and would demonstrate the big difference in economy we've shown in these tests.
You know, if that's so, the Ford boys, if they believe the bulletin you showed me the other day, you got a real surprise coming next spring, because it would appear to me we have a very good chance of getting this mobile gas economy run for the third year in a row.
I think we have. In that bulletin, you may remember that Ford said that Plymouth again in 1959 will offer no economy story.
Well, we've proven that wrong.
Further, they said that the standard Plymouth V8 requires premium fuel. This is not true. It has never been true of any standard Plymouth V8. We've always been capable of operating quite satisfactorily on regular fuel. Another thing, the Ford bulletin says that we require oil changes every 3,000 miles. This is not true. We recommend oil changes every 5,000 miles. Ford recommends changes every 4,000. I have a pretty low opinion of that kind of propaganda.
We can afford to be generous. We can take the other two in both economy and performance. My Golden Commando is the hottest thing in the Woodward Avenue sweepstakes any night in the week.
And let me tell you, the Golden Commando is the fastest American passenger car to 100 miles an hour. And I include the Dodge D500, DeSoto Adventurer, and the Chrysler C300E.
You know, we should remind the salesman that this year, for their customers who want performance, they can sell them the Golden Commando engine for around $80. And we got a good story in this super pack, too.
Let's just say it's faster than either the Chevrolet 348 cubic incher or Ford's biggest premium engine. And both of these engines cost more than our super pack.
I get the impression you're pretty proud of these engines. You got anything to say about the standard V8?
Well, you drove all three of them today, Harry. With all our economy advantages in normal driving, the man who likes performance gets it in a Plymouth, even with a standard V8.
In fact, any competitive owner who takes a demonstration drive in a Plymouth will discover a big difference in everything that counts. Torsion air, total contact brakes, push-button driving. All the Plymouth sales features give the owner an advantage he just can't get in any other car. Safety, ease of handling, comfort, performance, economy. Call it a car that's easy to live with, because maybe that spells out the biggest difference of all.